The draft is over, which means everybody's favorite time, which is UDFA season, has officially begun. We've been talking about different UDFAs. I think the reason we love talking about undrafted free agents on this channel is because it's so hard to find good information about who these guys are. And we've talked about individual ones so far. We've talked about how they fill in the roster. And we've also talked about them in comparison to some of the players we've got. Now, when we look at our team over the years, there have absolutely been UDFAs that make this team that maybe you did not expect to make this team. Those could come on the offensive line. They rarely come on the defensive line. They rarely come as wide receivers, believe it or not. I think the most common places you find UDFAs making the team are the defensive secondary, the offensive line to an extent, for sure, and then running back. That's like where most of your UDFA players end up sticking. So I'm going to be sticking to some of those positions, but I'm going to go outside that too. And we're just going to have a conversation about, like, what do we think and which UDFAs do I think are the most likely to make this team? Well, for starters, there was an Athletic article here. Colton Pouncey did a fantastic job talking about Meet the Line's undrafted free agents, which players could earn a roster spot. All right, so over the years, a number of UDFAs have been able to stick around longer than expected. Jerry Jacobs, Demetrius Taylor, defensive tackle, remember him? Cornerback, Stephen Gilmore were just a few. Brock Wright. So, like, look, UDFAs we get excited about. We've had guys that have started before as UDFAs. I'm trying to remember his name that played the nickel corner position. Help me out. Leave a comment right now. I'm blanking on his name. Taylor. No, I'm trying to remember what it was. Anyways, he played and he played well. We're beyond that at this point in this roster's regime where a UDFA comes in and starts year one. I don't think you see that, but you can absolutely see these undrafted free agents create good depth at certain positions, and you can also see them become wonderful special teams players for us, which is absolutely an important part. And one of them that we're going to talk about is a special teams player solely as a kicker. So we're going to talk about that. So the first guy is Kingsley Egwakin. He's the center out of Florida. There are two other centers on this list that I think are better than Kingsley, and we actually gave him the most money. He got the best grade from Dane Brugler out of these players at number 176 overall. We gave him $250,000, but I don't think he's necessarily the guy. Right now, our only backup option as far as center is concerned on the active roster is Graham Glasgow sliding over to play center. All right? That is what it is. I'm not so sure I'm happy with that being the end-all, be-all from this. Here's what it says about him. He doesn't have the length or brute power to overwhelm the man across from him, but he is an assignment-sound blocker with appealing movement skills and an instinctive feel for staying on schedule with his hands. All right? That is a good thing. Now, there's other players. Isaiah Williams. I think Chris did a video on him. He can get separation. He's not fast. He's not tall, but he got 1,000 yards this year in the Big Ten. You have to like that. And the Lions gave him $240,000. Maybe they like him as a slot opportunity or a slot prospect on this team. Steele Chambers. I think Steele Chambers is a decent player. I do. I think he's a decent player who has a lot of athletic upside. At least that's what I thought until I got to see his RAS score, and basically he did nothing with it. His height and weight were poor. All right. He's out here looking like a big safety. All right. And he didn't run the 40. His shuttle and 3-cone were good. They were fine. Nothing to write home about. He didn't bench. He has short arms, right, which is part of the reason why he might get stuck on blocks. That's a big issue for Steele Chambers. So far as we're going down this, there's not players that I'm like, oh, they could really do a good job, and I think they might make this team. We're not there yet, but don't worry. We're getting there. The first one that I like to look at is Marcus Norris Jr. out of Fresno State. All right, they've had a good history with UDFA corners. We know that, all right? You know, you talk about Gilmore last year. You talk about Jerry Jacobs before that. Even Starling Thomas, who I think they should have kept, ended up playing in 12 games for the Cardinals last year. All right? Norris is one of these guys that if you read about what he did as a senior, he was second team All Mountain West. I know it's All Mountain West. He had 59 tackles. He had 9.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks from the cornerback position. All right? A forced fumble, 2 picks, and 10 pass breakups. All right, as I continued reading this, he was third in the Mountain West in passes defended. That's unbelievable. He led the team in tackles for loss as a corner, and he was second on the team in sacks. So you know the Lions like corners who can come up, who can tackle, all right? There might be room for a guy like this, and I would like to know. I'm not sure what his numbers are, what exactly his athletic profile looks like. I don't know that. All right. But I can find it, and I did. All right. So you look at him, he's got decent speed. Honestly, the speed somehow is similar to that of our current corners that we just drafted. All right. He's undersized. But you have to wonder with kind of his, no pun intended here, coming from Fresno State, with his bulldog mentality and the way he plays things, you kind of have to wonder if maybe this is a guy that could even add some safety depth and come in. He's listed as a corner, but in other areas you see him as a free safety. I think he's got an outside shot to make this roster and play in special teams. All right, now let's go to 2 other guys that I really like, and that is Brian Hudson and Duke Clemens. They are center from Louisville and UCLA. All right, these are very interesting prospects who I believe are better than Igakwan. I think they could be. And it is very clear that this is a position of need for the Detroit Lions. If one of these guys steps up, they are going to make the team as a backup interior lineman or a backup center. They are practice squad. They have practice squad and being protected every week written all over them. So when preseason games start kicking in, when we start having our OTAs and we start having our voluntary and rookie mini camps and all that kind of stuff, look to see these names. Brian Hudson, Duke Clemens. I know center isn't sexy or anything like that, but I'm telling you right now, that's where it is. And I love Brian Hudson even more because when you look at him, Hudson's 6'5", and he was an All-American in shot put. All right? I love athletes that do things in other places, offensive linemen or defensive linemen that are, guys that, how do you want to put it? Like, wrestlers, track stars, shot put, right? Like these other things where it just takes pure strength and technicality and it can get, and it's in there. Duke Clemens ranked 15th of PFF. He was 15th out of all centers in college football this past year. All right. Ahead of the other guys. 40th, you go down there and you get Brian Hudson. All right. And it's not that far down. So these are guys that have played and have shown that they can block at kind of a quality level. But yeah, Duke Clemens is my early favorite to make it there. And then I have 2 other special teams guy that I just want to talk about before we get out of here. The first one is James Turner, the kicker at Michigan. Now, he was at Louisville, and he transferred to Michigan, all right, after Moody graduated. Jake Moody, who I believe was picked in the 3rd round by the 49ers last year, and was okay. And James Turner was actually a better kicker for U of M than Moody was. I know people, if you're a Michigan fan, you're like, no, he wasn't. Moody won, whatever, the Ray guy. I think that might be punter. I'm trying to remember what the kicker of the year is. But anyways, Turner was really good last year for U of M. He was consistent. And so I'm not saying he's an NFL kicker, but he went really, really well. And stop it if you've heard this before, but his long distance leaves a little bit to be desired. We've heard that with kickers for sure. And then the last one that I really want to talk about here is Hogan Hatton. Do the Lions have a long snapper battle in training camp? They just signed one of the most athletic ones in the class in Hatton. He received a relative athletic score of 9.89. Now, that relative athletic score of 9.89, I will find a way to pull that up for you guys. I'm going to look at it while I'm talking here. But it's one of those things where you have to also understand what the competition is. All right, so he is a long snapper. So there's only been 179 of these that have done a RAS score. And yes, he is number 3. Okay, so he is the third most athletic of 179. But you have to remember, this isn't like other positions where it's just ridiculous. So his size is fine. His bench is fine. Here's why I like it. The agility, the speed and stuff like that. Your long snapper sometimes actually does end up getting in on tackles and special teams. So it would be nice to have a guy who does have that athleticism. And our current long snapper is not signed after this year. So Hogan Hatton, if he proves to be a good player, could be a long-term solution rather than having to pay a vet minimum. You save a little bit of money. It's a very small amount, but you save a little bit of money over the next 4 years. So there's a thought on that too. All right. That's who I see. Look corner, look center. We had a couple of invitees that were coming in. Grand Valley State quarterback Cade Peterson. Northern Iowa quarterback Theo Day, Hillsdale College running back Michael Herzog, Missouri defensive tackle Josh Landry, and former Vikings defensive tackle TJ Smith. It's a player tryout. That's what we're getting coming in. Outside of the draft, that's everything. Now you're caught up, and I'm sure we'll continue to give you a lot of stuff on individual players and news that we're hearing out of rookie minicamp coming up here in the not too distant future. This is a fun time to be a football fan. This is where we get to nerd out and we get to think about what the future is and what the hope is in that future. It's very exciting. All right, if you haven't done it yet, we're pushing for 20,000. We're so close. We would love to have that. Help us get over the hump there for that 20,000. And thank you again for watching. Like, subscribe. See you on the next one.